so this is the little bit of maths that's involved in making fermented vegetables, so you'll cut up your vegetables and you cut them up so that there's a reasonable surface area for the microbes to get at. And remember, all of the microbes are already on your vegetables. So anybody, any organization trying to sell you a kit, a fermenting kit, where you need a starter culture or you need the jars that they've sent you, you don't. All the microbes are on the vegetables. You need a jar, ideally sort of the Kilner type with the rubber seal, because of the carbon dioxide being produced. You need that to be able to be released, and you need some salt. So it's like vegetables, a Kilner jar, and some salt. And the salt I tend to do, or most of us tend to do 2% salt. So you cut up the vegetables, you weigh the vegetables, and then you have to work out what 2% of that is, and that's what you add in salt.
Okay. And then does it make any difference as well in terms of, you know, the produce that you're fermenting, the vegetables or whatever? Do they have to be organic?
Yes. No, they don't. So I've had rare occasions where something's been treated, like, is it the infrared or something they treat to kill things on, and they kill everything. And so I've only had that once with some tomatoes where just nothing happened, and I think they must have been irradiated and just killed everything. But you don't have to use organic. I would just tend to peel, like if I was doing Jerusalem artichoke ferment, if they're not organic, I would peel them first. I think there just should be as little barriers as possible to doing this process, and there will still be microbes on non-organic vegetables, and you'll still be better off for having eaten them than not having eaten them.
Oh, absolutely. But if it was going to be, I don't know, if you're going to ferment apples or something like that, or pears or whatever, you still peel them as well. So basically whatever could have been in contact with pesticides or something. So
well, yeah, and we're always balancing up, because obviously on the peel is also the microbes.
Yeah.
So I would probably not completely peel something, or I'd just give it a good wash and accept that the process is going to deal with everything that's there. It's not, and you wouldn't necessarily peel the pear if you were eating it normally. So there's no reason to
do that either.
Yeah.
Okay. And then in terms of, so you've given us the ratio of salt, etc. And then what about time frame? How, you know, so ideally keep it somewhere cool. Does it have to be dark? And
no, so basically after I've added the salt, I normally am doing this, we've got quite a busy household here, so I tend to do it at meal times, because I just integrate it in, chop a few more veg, put them in the bowl to the side, add the 2% salt. I give it a quick massage in. You want the salt covering all of your veg, and then I leave it while I'm cooking the rest of the meal, and the salt goes in and by osmosis draws out the fluid. So you give it a good massage, and then you squeeze the vegetables and hold them up like that, and you should get fluids all running down your wrist to show that it's ready to go in the jar. The salts help to harden the pectins in the skin to give you a lovely crunchy product that's not soggy and slimy. And then they also, as we said, that is antimicrobial. So the lactic acid bacteria don't mind about it, but you know, Salmonella and Campylobacter and those sorts of things that we'd rather not were in there don't like the salt levels. So then when you've got the moisture running down your arms, this is my only bit of technology.
What's that?
My pickle packer.
Pickle packer.
You can just use your fist, or if you've got a flat rolling pin, but I love this. I don't know if you can see the yellow tint from all the turmeric that I've used.
Much loved. Yes, it's much loved, isn't it?
And then you're just packing it down a couple of handfuls at a time, and what you're trying to do is push it down to push the juices up and to push out oxygen pockets, because as we said before, this is a no oxygen
free environment. So it's only at that point then do you add the water?
No water added at all. All the fluid comes from the vegetables. You never add water to it. Oh wait, that's not true. So there's types of ferments, which is probably a whole nother episode, on a brine ferment, where you have like your whole dill pickles and you add brine, like 2% brine. Okay. But when you're doing it this way, where you've added dry salt, you have no need to add any moisture at all. It all comes from the vegetables, and you pack. You probably can't see here, but you pack them in.
Yeah, okay.
Just have a look.
It looks more like a sort of relish kind of consistency, doesn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, and that's because I've done nice, good surface area. you can't see in here, but there's then you make sure there's a small area as you've pushed it down, there's a small lid of moisture at the top, and that excludes your oxygen for you. And the beautiful thing about doing this yourself is that within 2 to 3 days you're out of the heterofermentative stage that I talked about before, where they're producing lots of different things, and you're into the homofermentative, which is where they're producing mostly lactic acid. And then, because it's yours in your house, you can taste it at day 3 and go, oh, what do I think of this? There won't be huge amounts of lactic acid at that stage, so it'll be crispy and tangy and delicious. And then the longer you leave it, the more sour and sharp it will become. And some people, when I do my courses, it's amazing because some people love that really early stage. Some people just love it when it's 3 months old.
Oh my goodness.
And still fermenting. Yeah, because it's about personal taste. So, and the temperature wise, I do it at room temperature.
Okay.
Because there's a few variables that affect the rate, and one of which is the temperature. And the warmer it is, if you live in a very hot climate, they'll ferment very fast. If you live in a very cold climate, much more slowly. So like 20-21 degrees is ideal. And then when it's at the taste that you want, you put it in the fridge, but it will still ferment very slow. That stay in the fridge.
And I'm guessing it doesn't expire, does it? Because it's got
never, I have
so
people have to put best before dates on, but I got a Guinness World Record in 2018 making the largest dish of bacterially fermented sauerkraut, and I've still got, that's 4 years old, and I've still got a jar in my fridge. And actually what's happening, what I love about it in terms of connecting us to our bodies, is that what's happening in that jar, some people might not want to think about this, but I love it, is what happens in our large intestine. So you've got what's happening in our large intestine is all of these microbes breaking down fiber. And of course, we don't have the enzymes to break down fiber. The beta glucans in oats, we don't do that. We've co-evolved with microbes, and they do that for us. Without microbes, we wouldn't actually be able to access the nourishment in many of our foods. It's because we've co-evolved that we've outsourced functions to them.
That's really fascinating to think of it that way. You're absolutely right. And obviously, the environment in your bowel, etc., there's no oxygen in there either, is there?
Exactly. I mean, there's some very limited when you're very near the sort of lumen, but and like when you look back and start to read, there's quite a well-respected biological theory that the mitochondria in our cells were actually of bacterial origin, and we've over millennia just gone, oh, we'll have you because you're useful, and we'll take you. They're producing,
we've just evolved with them.
They're producing neurotransmitters. They produce, I think it's about 1,600 different enzymes, vitamins, B vitamins, vitamin K. They're just, it's amazing.
Well, this is it. We're just beginning to realize a bit about it now, aren't we? In terms of, we used to think serotonin production was in the brain, but actually now we're estimated about 80% of it's actually in the gut.
Yeah, I mean, there's a bit of misunderstanding about that, because I'm pretty sure serotonin doesn't cross the blood-brain barrier. So the stuff that we're producing in our gut doesn't actually augment the levels in our brain, but it's influencing gut function and spasm and all sorts of things in terms of vagal nerve activity, and also, of course, tryptophan, I think, can cross the blood-brain barrier, so that production can.
So it is still favourable. That's a big message for a lot of people who are struggling, I guess, with their mental health. Is one big area, isn't it? The gut function is really important, and we've only realised that in the last few years. We know a little bit about immunity, but mental health is a big one for lots of people.
And I think it's interesting to note, I couldn't believe that 80% of vagal communication is afferent. So 80% of what's going through the vagus nerve is it telling us how our gut and our organs are doing, not the brain telling the vagus nerve what to do. So if you think about looking after your gut health and what information is then going up to your brain, and 80% of it is in that direction. So who actually is in charge of the gut